my show in the past, you know that I typically address everything dealing with the incarcerated, disenfranchised, and their families. But what we found over the years is we can't stop there because you don't have to be behind physical bars to be in shackles in your heart and your mind. But no worries, because what we believe on Beyond the Shackles, as well as the Holy Spirit Broadcasting Network, is by the blood of Jesus, all can be set free. And if you are watching us and you're listening to us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, please don't forget to hit the like and the share button. Hit the like and the share button and subscribe to our channel, the YouTube channel. You won't be sorry, because my show is there, and also so many other great shows. 24 hours a day you can access the Word of God and be encouraged. But speaking of encouragement, we have a very obvious, a very a somber, serious subject, but we're going to bring the light of Christ into this, so that the hopeless can be hopeful, and that there is hope. And what we're going to talk about, the title of our show today is Rescued from the Snare of Suicide. So rescued from the snare of suicide. And this is important because, according to the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, in 2020, suicide was the 12th leading cause of death overall in the U.S., claiming the lives of over 45,900 individuals. That's just from 2020, and the age range is absolutely astounding on who this is happening to. And speaking of this, our guest that we have today, that you see sitting before you, I'm going to introduce her to you, and then we're going to get into our conversation about her own personal testimony with this very thing. And so, who we have with us today is Pastor Debbie A. Green, and her desire is dedicated to walking in love and healing others with the God kind of love, because that's the best kind. That's the best kind. He is called most of all to love, because God is love, and to love your neighbors is God. To love and as yourself is God's greatest commandment. And she's currently laboring in love at Power of Praise Network in Glendora, California.
Yes.
Debbie serves with her husband, Pastor Billy Green Jr., who she has loved for 16 years and has united with him in marriage for 14 years. And she's also a book author as well. She's a children's book author of the book Rocky the Clown. And well, at the end of the show, when we have her tell you how you can get in contact with her for her
Mhm.
speaking engagements, also we'll tell you how you can get that book. Um, but all of this great testament, all the things that we talk about in it just now, is a testament to the love of Christ that he has for all of us,
Yeah.
has for all of us, and he had it for Pastor Debbie too. Because prior to this life that she lives now, this life of promise that she's embraced, it wasn't always that way. And we're going to get into that discussion with you. So, without further delay, I'd like to introduce to you Pastor Debbie Green.
Shalom blessings, everyone. Shalom blessings of good health, good wealth, grace, mercy, joy, unspeakable joy. I'm excited about being here today.
And we're
Which,
excited to have you.
yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. So what I wanted to do, because I opened the top of the show as you're sitting here, and we are talking about the suicide rate here in the United States. This is not around the world. This is the United States, and 45,900 people. That's a lot of individuals, and that's just who's been able to be tracked by statistic. We can probably assume that the number is even higher. So what I would like to do is just ask you. I know there was a point of time. Tell me, what type of household did you grow up in? Did you know the Lord as a young child? Were you exposed to the Lord? Could you tell us about that aspect of your life, and then at what point things changed?
Okay, so um, I grew up in Los Angeles, over there on 41st and Western. And for those who, it used to be Santa Barbara, close to the Santa Barbara Street, but now it's called King Boulevard, basically. And that's pretty much the area I grew up in. Um, I remember my mom at that point, like my mom and dad and everyone, no one was going to church, but my grandmother came to live with us for a while, and she was an avid church goer. And I remember I would ask her all the time, Grandma, can I go to church with you? Can I go to church? And she would be like, no, no. And I was like, how come? And I would ask mom, like, where is she going? And what is it all about? I was like, it must be something important, something powerful, because it was something that she did, of course, every Sunday. And finally my grandmother broke down. And I remember, and this is kind of hilarious, I remember being so happy to go. My brothers and sisters, there's five of us, they was like,
Yeah.
you but
Uh-huh.
me, I was just like, yeah. And I remember being in the bathroom shouting and getting so I was praising God without realizing that's what was going on in my life. I was like in the second grade. I was
Mhm.
just so happy, and I was like,
Mhm.
yay, we're going to church. We're going to church. And then my grandmother popped me. Stop being loud and get dressed. And so I was like, oh, but I remember when as I was going, chaplain, I enjoyed it so much. I would be so in tune, like everybody would be playing, and I would be so attentive, looking at the pastor and listening to the word of God, and
Mhm.
understood it. Pretty much understood it. And so I think in the fourth grade, we met this lady. Her name was Miss Pinkston, and she asked my mom, could we take her, your children to church, and she allowed it, and we all end up getting saved.
Oh,
We all
amen.
got saved on the same day. My oldest brother was at home, but when we went up to get baptized, all of us got baptized on the exact same day. Now, reminder, my mom was in the church, but she had walked away from the church.
Uh-huh.
Grandmother comes back, and then it led up to us being back in the church, which my mother, once she got saved, all the way up into the time that she passed away, she was an avid server and
Yes.
giver, and she did so much, at the church and in the community, of clothing people and everything. And that's where I think you had saw my testimony, because she passed away on New Year's, uh
Oh.
2012. And that's why I had put that post up, because
Mhm.
most people think Christmas is that time of year where a lot of people commit suicide, but New Year's is actually the number one time that people commit suicide.
And that's interesting that you say that, because I'm gonna tell you this. I don't have a general problem with depression. I'm like everybody else, maybe a situational depression because something happened, but then I kind of can get along and roll along. But until I received prayer for it, I had some years that there was a spirit of depression that would attack me on New Year's Eve, going into the new year. This went on for a long time where I had a hard time getting dressed. I had to push to get myself out of the house. And I just had another relative that posted that, this is on New Year's Day, that he felt so sad and he couldn't shake it. So I don't
Mm,
know what it is about going into the new year
yeah,
that spiritually, there is an attack of depression that's happening. And it's nothing that I paid attention to until
right.
really you said that, about that statistic. I find that very compelling.
Right. And so, and like I said, now I have what I do is, remember I said, she always watched the Rose Parade faithfully. So I
Mhm.
say, in honor of her, I do it for like 25 minutes. I actually watched the whole thing. I thought I was going to do 20 minutes. I did more. And I enjoyed it, because we should sit and watch it with her. And then as you
Yeah.
get older, you kind of get away from it. But, from there, we moved. My mother had opened, my father was killed
Mm.
when I was in the second grade. It was all on the news. And from that point in my life, I start being, now I know what it is. At the time I didn't know. I experienced the spirit of rejection
Now
start.
talk to us a little bit more about that. How did, the because first of all, it wasn't not that it's great how anybody's father would die. But that's such an aggressive way for someone's life to be gone through murder. So,
Right.
what is it about that passing away? Did it matter that? Do you think it mattered that the fact that he was murdered, or is it just the fact that he passed away?
It was both. It was because I was so close to my dad. It was both
Mm-hmm. Mm.
because he took me everywhere with him,
Yeah.
and we did everything as a family.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so hard. And our spirit speaks to us. And my grandmother used to tell my mother all the time, she has a gift, she has a gift. And I remember when we were getting dressed for Easter, it actually happened. Here's another holiday, right? On Easter, and he bought all of us clothes and everything, and we went to church. On
Mm-hmm.
Easter, he
Mm-hmm.
he was he had walked away from the church. His family, he has a lot of ministers in his family. And I remember he started going back to church, and he told my mom, I'm going to start going back to church. And it was just a happy moment for us. And in that day, uh, he said, well, you guys go ahead and go to church, and you go to the parade, and I'll see you guys later.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's like, I walked up and said, you're not going to go. You're not going to go. No, I see. And I remember I was just adamant about it. And we went to church, and I was feeling something came over me. I was not fine. And my mother knew Debbie's not fine.
Yeah.
And I remember even when we was going to the parade, we was on the freeway going down, somebody said something about the word dead, and it hit my spirit so hard.
Wow.
And I did not enjoy the parade. And that might be a reason why kind of,
Yeah.
don't really, like going to parades. They're nice, but I think that is the similarity of it. And I remember my mother they kept saying, look, and they picked me up, look, look, look. And I still was like, something. And my mother looked at me, she said, something's not right. And that
Yeah.
girl could feel it in her spirit, because
Mm-hmm.
even at that young age, I would see spirits walking through walls and everything else, and I would
Yeah.
jump in the bed with them. I'd be like, oh, the man is in the room.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah. He was
move to
spiritually
that room,
sensitive.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I had gifts at that age, didn't even know, they didn't know,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't know. A lot of people was not even preaching about gifts and everything at that time. I'm sure they were, but it wasn't massive of how it is
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
So my mother knew. She said when she looked at me and the way I was acting, she said something's not right. We didn't have cell phones or anything back then to call and say come home, right? That was not there. So he
Yeah.
got killed in LA at one of the famous bars called Menlo Bar.
Mm-hmm.
So right
Mm-hmm.
across from the Coliseum. I think they finally tore it down, but it was famous because a lot of celebrities went there and performed and sung and played pool. He got shot and killed there. So my mother kind of knew, and the phone ring. I remember the phone ringing and everything, and I knew. Even in a sec, I knew. I was
How old
like,
were you again?
I was in the second grade, so I was like,
Wow.
like what, seven, 6 or 7,
7.
and
Mm-hmm.
I knew that something, and I just was under the covers, and I was like, oh please, you're hoping and praying, but I knew, my mother knew too. So when she picked up the phone, she said she did. When she picked up the phone and they said, hey, Mr. Rich, is this, he's been shot and killed.
My goodness.
Yeah,
My
and
goodness.
that was, what I'm saying, that was very dramatic. And seeing his car, and it was blood in his car, and so these are things sometimes that at a young age people think, oh, you'll get over it, right? Hmm.
Yeah.
You'll get over it, right? I found this beautiful quote, and this quote says this. It says, nobody, let me go back to it. It's a great quote. It says, nobody knows how much pain people carry from their childhood. We carry that pain over, and they just expect, okay, they'll get over it, right?
Yeah.
And I remember even when he passed, because our family's in Texas, it was like, mom, could we go to the funeral? My mother was like, no. you know she wouldn't, in fact, she wouldn't let us go to a funeral until we were teenagers. She would not let us go when we were younger. It didn't matter who it was. She was like, no. And excuse me.
You
So
just felt you were too young to experience a funeral.
right. And she did not want that. And I remember I just saw pictures of him in a casket and everything. So I missed him. And then, but going to school and it being all on the news, right? Going to school and they're like, oh, she's an orphan. Everybody had the information wrong. Oh,
Yes,
she's an orphan now. And people were picking on me because my father was killed. And I thought that was the
it's
weirdest
cruel.
thing ever. I
Yeah,
mean, literally being bullied and pushed and, trying to be, pushed to fight them. And I was like, and that was not the case before. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? So it
yeah,
ended up, so that was hard. And then my mom was so brokenhearted that he passed away. She ended up having to have open heart surgery because they told her she wasn't supposed to have any children at all because of her heart. But
yeah.
it's five of us. My mom wouldn't have children anyway.
Yeah, she had children.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she had children. Whose report do you believe?
yeah,
She was like, I'm having children. You're not telling me anything. And so she had five of us. And so the doctor said, what happened? He said, we told you you couldn't have children. You had five. You were fine. And then she told him what happened. And he
yeah.
said
Her
that
heart
was
was
the breaking
broken.
heart. Yeah, her heart. He
Yeah,
said, oh, you have a broken heart. So she had open heart surgery. She was the breadwinner of the house. And so we grew up in a home. And so we went from there. Two, she got really sick hanging with our cousin. They lived in the projects, but we still was going to school over there. My mother said,
yeah,
no, they got to still go to school there. And then we finally moved over there by USC,
yeah,
where the place is kind of, it seems like it's a brownstone, but it's one level. And
yeah,
so that was like, entirely different. That was that in itself. It was like, wait, this is not a house. What is that? I remember that was the first time I ever seen roaches. I was like, what's that? And my
uh-huh.
mom laughed. I was standing on top of the chair like it was a rat. I was like, what are those things? And she thought it was a hilarious thing because she was born and raised in Columbia, South Carolina.
Yeah,
And she thought it was so funny. So transitioning from there and your mom not being in that health, and we used to get anything that we wanted. Now we go
yeah,
from there, Euvonka, that childhood pain, to your mom had to get on the county to support
yeah.
the family until she can get back healthy, which she eventually did, to get back.
And
on-
being bullied, and it- that's unbelievable. The things
Yeah.
that
And
our pain will drive us to do and leave us susceptible to. But then there's also the aspect that you showed signs of having a call on your life very early. So the enemy, he no holds barred for him. He just will try anything. So he went after you in your youth,
right.
to try to stop you.
Yeah, he started early because even at 5, I remember my mother at an early age had to talk. If anybody touch you, um, feel free to come and talk to me.
Yeah.
She talked to me and my sister, and I remember I trusted my mom.
Mhm.
And so in that house, where my father was still alive then, um, a family member, that everybody loved. It was like a favorite uncle.
Yeah.
And I remember he would always say, "Let's go play hide and seek," and that was my first kiss, Euvonka, in the closet with an uncle who tongue kissed me.
Oh,
You
wow.
understand? So, and then I
Yeah.
had to tell my mom, and so of course my dad and it was all upset,
Yeah.
and they had to handle that. And then it went from, it was always like the enemy was trying to touch me a certain way.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
landlord did it, and then I said, "Mom, the landlord stuck is talking about," my mom. It was just
Yeah.
all that was so horrific. And like it was one of those things where, oh, it'll be okay, it'll pass, but it doesn't
Yeah.
pass.
Yeah.
We still have it, right? And what do they
Program.
call it? The file cabinet. It's still there in
Mhm.
that file cabinet. So from there to there, then once we moved and we went over there, my mother's one of her boyfriends tried to molest and rape me, actually. So he was trying to
Goodness.
push me. And then at that point, I was like, it must be something wrong with me. It's
Yeah.
something that I'm doing. What am I doing to make these men want to touch
Yeah.
me? But like it's that's the enemy plan. The plan was, okay, we want her to be, I need her to be out there and
Yeah.
promiscuous, right?
Yes.
Which eventually happened because that had kept happening. You know what I'm saying? And
Mhm.
so, and then someone said, no, it's not your fault. And I said, but it must be something. I don't get it. So went from there, and in school, even in elementary, of being older over there, same thing, got bullied.
Yeah.
I always had a lot of friends though, which was weird. Even from second grade, my mother used to say, Debbie, they want you to come out and play. I didn't want to come out and play. There'd be like 15, 20 of them standing out there and say, come play with us. Wait. And I was very quiet. So I was like,
Yeah.
how am I attracting all these people?
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
not an extrovert. I never understood that. But you know how they said we magnetize, towards people, and sometimes people see your heart, they see your love, they see your light, and
Yeah.
they're attracted to that light. And so even though I would be bullied, I still had a lot of friends, and I think the bullying kind of stopped when I had a fighting
Yeah.
in junior high with a gang member, and I almost broke his jaw. And then from then they was like, oh, she can fight, leave her alone.
So that fixed that.
That fixed that. So in high school, I
Mhm.
didn't have any fights or anything like that. So going through that, and then college, of course.
Yeah. So basically, and that's going to take us kind of down the road of where we're trying to get to,
Right.
because so you had this very tragic situation happen with your father, and then there's this other trauma that's occurred, with the the molestation and attempted molestations, and all of this. While at the same time, God, you love the Lord, especially at that time, and then now you get up to a point where it's time for college. So what shifted in you, and was there any connection between all the stuff that we just talked about?
The connection is it goes with the scripture of love and of love. I stayed in the church till I was 18. Um because you was going to church or you was in mama's house. It's like you don't get to tell me what to do, you go to
Yeah.
church. And I
Yeah.
got to the point in my life I would go, why? And it wasn't because I didn't love God. It was because of things that I saw going on in the church,
Yeah. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
church building, I would say. It
Yeah.
was, I remember my sister would serve, and she would serve the youth cookies and punch, and that was her ministry, right?
Yeah.
And people were upset about the small things. Sometimes people get upset about the small things. They were upset because she was doing that. And I remember after a service, my sister was coming from the altar, walking through the aisle, and it was after service, and one of the pastor's nieces walked past her and called her a female dog, but she said the word.
Wow.
And I heard it and I saw her and I was shocked. I
Yeah.
was like, is this what this is about? And then I was seeing other things that happened in church and how people were treating each other. And I was like, well, if this is what being a Christian is about, then I don't want it.
Yeah.
And so I got to the point where I was like, even though I was taught in Bible study, like I said, and when my pastor preached, I was like, he was an
Yeah.
awesome pastor. I was like, I don't believe in love.
Mm.
So I told my mother, she said, you can't till you get 18. I said, well, when I get 18, I'm leaving the church. And I was adamant. I had faith enough to leave the church. I am leaving at 18, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
no different from a bank robber. They can have faith too to rob a bank and come up with a plan and rob a bank.
Yeah.
Faith
Yeah.
is faith, right? And so I said that it's our minds are strong. I said that and I'm like, no, I'm gonna leave. And I left
And
at
so
8.
you kept that promise to
I
yourself.
kept that promise to myself. And then I was at Mount St. Mary's University. Right. And
Yes.
then remember, my roommate, I had two roommates, Tanya and Candice. And
Yeah.
Tanya always went to church. She was an avid.
And
Remember?
just so you guys know that Pastor David and I went to college together.
Yes, our
Yes.
buildings were right across
Across
from each
from
other.
each other. Yes.
I
Uh-huh.
was in building two. What was your building number?
One.
One. And then
Yeah.
I was in building two, right?
Hmm.
And she would go all the time. And then she was like, come to church. And I was like, oh, I want to go to church with you. And then sometimes I would go. But a lot of times so God was still trying to pull me back in. He was trying to pull me
Hmm.
back in. And I'm like, I'm not going. But it was some supernatural things that actually happened right there at the university, where that people kept saying, God must really love her, because how did he do this? How did he know? How does she know? Because he speaks to me through dreams and everything
Yeah.
too. And it was like, how did he give her this? Because somebody broke something in mine and he told me who it was. And then I taunted them, and I taunted him, and I'm not supposed to do it. God told me later, you know better than that, right? He
Yeah.
still was talking to me even though I wasn't going to church,
Yeah.
and I didn't even know that that was his voice, Euvonka. You know how people say something said, now
Yeah.
I said no, the Holy Spirit now, but like
Yes.
wasn't there in that part of my life, right?
Hmm.
And he said, you know better than that. But he showed me, he was like, such and such is scared to give you your, camera back because she broke it. And I was like, so I was taunting her. I kept going to, so are you giving my camera today? And I kept
Yeah.
messing with her. Finally, I said, you know what? I know you broke my camera, right? She said, yeah. I said, it's okay. And she said, I'm so
How did
sorry.
you know?
Yeah, how did you know? And so
Hmm.
right there, I had no still I didn't know that was a gift. You
Hmm.
understand? So
Yeah.
he never, when we say God said he will never leave you nor forsake you, even though I made a commitment to walk away from him, he never walked away.
Yes. And that brings us to the situation. How did it escalate till you get to a point, and then talk about what happened and, and what took place?
So I think the escalation came from even having so much pressure of when I was, when we were going through college, I had to work full time to put myself through college of the scholarships that, after the scholarships and the Pell Grant. So I'm working full time. I'm going to college. Still not feeling 100 about my decision even to get the degree in business management. I was, making straight A's in psychology and all these other ones. And instead of
Yeah.
shifting, I didn't shift because I was, I'm a musician, and that's where my heart really was. I did, in the
Yeah.
end of being a senior, start taking music classes, at Mount St. Mary's. But I should have started that. I should have just dropped all that. It's, from the beginning, and just said, let me do music,
Yeah.
and I didn't do it. I'm like, everybody's believing that I'm going to have this. So you start doing things that people desire for you to do,
Yeah. And
but not the
on
true
purpose.
desires of your heart.
Yeah.
And so I remember I was, I said, my mom, she the one wanted me to go to college. I'm gonna give her both of my degrees. I don't even care about it. When I graduated,
Hmm.
I gave her both my degrees. I don't even have it. It's in my sister's home.
Hmm.
I was like, this is what you wanted. So
Yeah.
I was just angry. And then after that, at my job, I ended up getting a promotion and ended up working at Department of Mental Health. Now, what happened with that,
That's
I was working
ironic.
with the dream team,
Hmm.
and I was like the baby, and they taught me, and they was like, that team right there is bad to the bone. And
Yeah.
so it got to the point where when I was getting a promotion like almost every 6 months. And
Hmm.
then I remember working for FEMA, and FEMA wanted me because they trained the lady trained me, and she's like, you're like one of the best we've had. I want to take you to Washington. Well, they blocked it. The people I work for blocked it. And she said, you guys know you're wrong. So experiencing things like that, it's like, well, why would you block me from an opportunity?
Yeah.
And then they start harassing me once they transferred me to Santa Monica to kind of manage an office and everything. And people started getting scared. They were like, she's going to end up being a manager. We are afraid. Some people thought it was going to take their position. So it started to become hard,
Yeah.
very hard. It wasn't fun anymore because I used to enjoy going to work. I was like, this is just hard. It's getting, really hard. So I started partying a lot. I was just like a party animal. I was partying.
And if you know how quiet Debbie was quiet, when she told me that this was all going on, I'm like, really,
Right.
Um, so basically, you went off into, because of all these things that culminated. So now you're excessively partying,
Right.
and that encompassed a lot of drinking and what have you.
Partying, drinking, and everybody wanted to hang out, but it's things that I wanted to do. They was like, oh no, sometimes, they'll call me to say, which one, what club? Not, I didn't like clubs. We did sports bars. Which sports bar are we gonna go? So Santa Monica, the promenade, that was my stomping ground.
Hmm.
I knew
Hmm.
all the bouncers knew us from all the bars. Even one of the oldest bars in Santa Monica, they knew us when we came in there to play
Hmm.
pool, darts, and then afterwards it went into like they would play music later. So that's what a partying went
Yeah.
into. and then the extensive drinking. And I just got to the point that even though I had my own place, even though I had, what people say, oh, she had a bad car, Mazda RX-7. Even though I had that and I had money and, the salary was right, I felt empty. I said, something is not right. I'm feeling empty, right? And I'm feeling like, what else is there to life, right?
Yeah.
And so I start asking people, I was like, what do you guys think about my life? And the only thing everybody can tell me was everything that was external,
It was superficial.
superficial. Even it didn't matter, Christians, non-Christians, everybody kept saying, oh, you have it going on. Well, that was what they felt. I didn't feel that. I felt like I have things that some people don't have, but something's missing.
Mhm.
What's missing? You know? And what's missing? Something's missing. And so no one said anything to me like this. This is a quote I found. And the author, his name is Deacon Jones. And it says this: if you feel like you want to die, it's time to sit down and make a list of all the things you haven't done.
Mm,
Even if that was presented to me, I probably would have been like, oh, somebody would probably say, well, Debbie, you're still young. Why don't you just get out and travel? Why don't you move to
yeah.
Europe? Why don't you move to XYZ? That was not presented to me at the time. And so I was like, well, if this is all life is stuff, I was like, I'm ready to leave. This is it.
Mm.
Then I accomplished. Then I guess I have accomplished everything. I had not accomplished everything, chaplain,
Because you didn't know your purpose.
Right. I didn't know what my will and what the will and purpose was. And so because I didn't know, I was just like, this it. And I was like, okay, I was trying to check out. But in between that, I remember seeing something manifest in the place that I stayed in. And it scared me. And I said, I remember though, even though I wasn't in church, I took my Bible with me to my place. And I said, I have a Bible around here somewhere. And I start reading the Bible again. And then they start calling me and going, hey, where you want to go party at? And I'm laughing reading the Bible. And they're like, what are you reading? I'm like, the Bible. They like, it's funny. I said, yeah, the way I'm seeing it, it's hilarious, right? But it was the way the Spirit was reading it to me and bringing
Yeah.
it to me. It was funny. And then I said, one day I remember, and then I said, okay, we just go party at such, such. Okay. And I remember one day they called and they was like, well, they wanted me to tell them and I wouldn't tell them. And I said, okay, well, anyway, yeah, you guys, let me call you back. Click. And I kept reading my Bible. And they was like, you saved? Because
Mhm.
I'm out partying with them. They was like, you saved? And this is what
Yeah.
I was saying. Yes, I've been saved since the fourth grade. People say that. I've been saved since the second grade, the fourth
Yeah.
grade. Mine's,
Yeah.
and then they said, you are? Because of course they questioned it. I'm out there partying with them, right? And so I said, I'm gonna go back to church. And I said, nah. And then my baby brother, that he was going to school in Wisconsin and then he moved to Minnesota. He said to me, he said, Debbie, I think I found the perfect church for you. And I said, really? He said, you can wear your jeans. You don't have to wear a dress. And I was like, really? So that
Mhm.
kind of piqued my interest too, right? And so he said, I went to this church around the corner from the house. I think you should go there. I said, okay. So before I went though, this is what I said, chaplain. I said, okay, God, I'm gonna go, but I'm only gonna go one Sunday out of the month. He was like, okay.
Mhm.
I'll
Mhm.
take it.
Mhm.
I'll take it. And
Yeah.
they one Sunday went to two Sundays to three Sundays to I end up joining the church, joining the choir, end up in a position in the choir and everything. But just to say, even before that happened, before I actually joined and they would always pray. And I was reading the Bible, and they would always pray at a certain time and tell everybody, you can come to the altar, you can just sit in the seats, however you want to do. This is your personal time with God. And I would always sit down all the time. I
Well,
wouldn't.
let me ask you though. Was this that you're talking about? Was that after you had made the
This
attempt or
was
before?
before, and this was the
Really?
breaking point. This was the breaking point because it has to do with will and purpose.
Wow.
So he's telling me, so now I'm still partying, right? But he
Mhm.
told me, hey, you going to church? So I would go and I would sit there doing prayer time. And one Sunday when I went, the pastor said, I need for you guys to do something different. If you always sit in a chair, do something different. Okay. So I said, well, what should I do? And next thing I know, supernaturally, something just lift me up. So I had an angel on one side, an angel on the other side. And it was like, and I was like, what's going on?
Oh wow.
And the pastor was walking through the church just praying, and everybody was praying. I was like, and all of a sudden, my mouth opened, and God stuck his hand in my mouth and pulled something out, and I started going, "Da-da-da-da-da-da," and speaking in tongues.
Oh
I was like,
wow.
oh, no, 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 not that. Oh, right there.
Oh
I
wow.
covered my mouth. I did not want the pastor to see. I was like, oh, no, no, this could not be because I
That's
was
amazing.
taught, even though I was raised in a Baptist church, for people who wasn't, I was taught that in order to speak tongues, you have to be holy. And I'm thinking,
Oh
what am I speaking? Wait, I'm still partying. I'm just here on a
yeah.
Sunday. Wait, what's going on? What's going on? And so I remember what I don't understand. And later, as I established my relationship with God, wait, what happened? He said it wasn't about you being holy. Holiness comes just because you're a child of the Most High King. Has nothing to
Mhm.
do with your walk or what he said. You believed. And I said, I believe. He said, yeah, remember you was reading the scripture. I was reading the day of Pentecost.
I say.
And yeah, so when they said they drunk, I said out loud with my mouth, they're not drunk. Why do they think they're drunk? They're not drunk. They received. I believed at that moment. And
Mhm.
because I believed, I end up receiving. I believed in the baptism. I believed in the, speaking in tongues at that point and didn't realize it. Didn't
So
realize
so
it.
basically, when all of that happened to you and you were filled with the Holy Spirit, now you're
Mhm.
on your way, but you were going to need every bit of that. So let's fast forward to when
Okay.
you are in that car.
Right. So I'm gonna fast forward because that is essential. That would happen. And let me
Yeah.
tell you one more thing though
Mhm.
before I fast forward to the car. When that happened, and I sat down and prayer was ending, the young lady that was sitting in front of me, her head turned all the way around, kind of like
Wow.
what's the name of that movie?
The
Her
Exorcist.
Yeah, her head turned all the way around, and her eyes was glossy, and she was going, and the
Ooh.
enemy was looking at me through her, and then her
Yes.
head turned back, and it scared me. I was like, okay, so now God knows what's going on. Satan knows what's going. I don't know, right?
Yeah.
So at that point, I'm still partying, but I'm still feeling a certain way. Then I called my job, and I was like, I started getting depressed. After that happened, I got really, really depressed.
Mhm.
And I called my job and I said, I'm gonna take a week off for vacation because I had so much vacation time because I rarely went. I didn't
Yeah.
go. And I said, I'm gonna take a week off. And they said, okay, go ahead and take a week off. And I didn't tell anybody in my family. I didn't tell my cousin we was very close and best friends and cousins at the same time.
Mhm.
I didn't even tell her. And I just sat in my living room, went to the liquor store, and I kept buying 40 ounces because I used to drink beer at the time. And
Yeah.
I had all these 40 ounces around me, and I was sitting in a chair. I had a couch. I didn't sit on a couch. I just had a chair with alcohol sitting around me, and I was drinking, and I didn't even eat. And I was like, how could I kill myself? And so
Hmm.
for the whole week, I'm thinking, well, do I want to take pills? No, that hurt. I said, it
Mhm.
might cramp my stomach. I seen too many movies where it cramps your stomach. I don't
Yeah.
want to do it. Maybe I should slip my wrist. No, that's gonna hurt too to cut. I don't want to be cutting and bleeding all over the place. And I'm sitting there thinking, and the only reason why I didn't do it that week because I'm trying to come up with a method of
Mhm.
how this is going to be done. So my cousin finally calls the job. Can I speak to Debbie? Debbie's not here. She haven't been here for a week. What? What a man. She lived right around the corner from me. What do you mean? Like she haven't called me. She haven't came around the corner. We were close. And so she came around. She had keys to my apartment. Her, my mom, and certain people I trusted. And she walked in. What are you doing? Because I believe if she didn't have a key, and she just would have been knocking, I wouldn't answer the door.
Mhm. Mhm.
So she came in and she was like, what are you doing? And so she saw everything. It was like,
Yeah.
how you see everything, but I guess for her, it didn't click. Like, let me call the family and say something's wrong.
Yeah.
And I did kind of tell her, well, I just feel in a certain way. She said, well, such
Let's
and such
cheer
is
up.
yeah, cheer
Mhm.
up. Such is having a birthday party and they invited us. Let's go. And I was like, I don't want to go. No, no, let's go. And so I kept saying, I don't want to go. Debbie, please, please. And I was like, okay, because we always trying to please others, right? Sometimes. So
Mhm.
please, I ended up going. I got dressed. We went and we was having a good time. And then I started drinking hard liquor. I was not a hard liquor person.
So now you've advanced.
I'm depressed. Now I have advanced into the hard liquor. And then,
Mhm.
we keep going across the street. I didn't like it going across the street. I felt like spiritually, now that I know, those spirits was looking at me like, this girl is in here. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? So they was giving me a hard time doing what I wanted to do. My cousin did not want to do. And I said, see, this is what I'm talking about. This is just so unfair. And then I'm close to my sister. I'm close to her. They're not getting along. Everybody wants me to choose. I don't want to choose. I don't
Yeah.
want to choose between the two. My job is giving me a hard time. And so when we get in the car, I'm so upset. And we're driving down Crenshaw and I'm mad. And I'm just so upset. And it's a two-seater, but it's three people in the car now. And
So
it's
it's talking about the third person.
the third person, because so it's like, what's that remind you of? The fire, right? And then, but Jesus, that was God, but this was not that. This was Satan, was the third person, and
Mhm.
he's talking to me. And I turned to the side and I said, I see him, and I was like, wait. So even though I'm really intoxicated, I said, isn't this a two-seater? Who's this guy? How's he in my car? And then he starts saying, telling me, running everything down in my life that horrible that happened.
Oh wow.
Because
Mhm.
even though people say we do it, it's not the devil, it's us doing. He's still behind it. We got to remember when Jesus was 40 days and the enemy appeared, right? Jesus wasn't
Mhm.
doing anything for him to appear. He
Mhm.
appeared, right? And
Mhm.
so, he's not omnipresent, but he does things and then he go pew and take off, right?
Yeah.
And so, and that's basically what he did that night. So he was there and he said, so, he told me all this stuff and he was telling the truth because he was telling what had happened in my life,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, right. He said, so if I was you, to make everybody happy, now here's the lie, to make everybody happy, I would kill myself. And I was like, yeah, that's true. Because he already knew I was contemplating it for the
Yeah.
whole week, right? He said, so he helped me out with figuring out what to do. So when I tell you to jump out the car, jump. He said, but when I tell you, I said, okay. And then I saw this car pulling up and he said, now. I opened it and I jumped out the car. My head hit the pavement. My body was going psh, because flesh and the dress I had, everything was getting torn off of me and everything. And I remember I opened my eyes for that last time and I saw Satan standing there going like this, like, I got you.
Wow.
And my eyes closed and I was standing in complete darkness. And God's shadow was standing before me and he was so angry. He
Mhm.
was so upset at
Yeah.
what I had done.
Mhm.
And I remember your spirit speaks truth to you.
Yeah.
And I stood there and I said, I'm going to hell.
Mm.
And from that glimpse, the other glimpse was me being chained with 4 to 5 other people being led by something was in front of us leading us, and we were all shackled and chained.
Oh wow.
And it was against like this mountain area, and it was a small road, not that big of a road that we were being led by from that road. It kind of reminded me of Lord of the Rings, how they
Mhm.
was on that. It was just like that. And all of a sudden Jesus spoke. He came and he said, wait,
Look at
she
that.
has been tricked. She was tricked. And
So
I
he
was
came
like,
on your behalf.
he came and spoke on my behalf. When they said the blood of Yeshua God Almighty will speak on your behalf, I said, oh my goodness, he spoke and God stopped turning because he was turning like really slow. But he
Yeah.
was turning and I already knew what the sentence was. And so he stopped turning. He said, and then they start talking. And then God turned around and started talking to me. And he was like, "Da-da-da, and this is what's going to happen. And blah, 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 blah. Like he was like, I was getting spanked.
Yeah.
And I thought he was going to change his mind and let me go to heaven, but it was not my time. So if it's not your time, and and you're trying to jump the line, he's going to put you back. And
So
so
eventually, had you died?
I
Do you
had
believe?
I had died, and let me tell you about this part of how I knew I was dead, and it wasn't like me being knocked out and unconscious. My cousin was studying to for nursing to be a X-ray tech, but also for nursing. So
Mm,
she had certificates, all that. She knew how to take pulse, all that. She was being trained, in hospitals and stuff like. She knew her stuff. And so
mhm.
when she said she looked at the door, she said, "Oh my goodness!" She jumped out the car. She stopped the car and she was running towards my body and was like, it was going to be too late because that car, when he said, I'll tell you when, the car was about to run over my body. And she said, a big giant hand came from the clouds and said, poof, and pushed that car around my body.
Wow.
And she said they kept going. And I remember seeing those guys' faces. So not only did he save them from running over my body, but he saved those guys from having a traumatic experience in their life
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
well. Because sometimes we don't think what we do, it affects others. What I did, I
Yeah.
didn't think that it was going to affect anybody because even the enemy said, oh, this is going to make everybody happy, right? And
Mhm.
so when he put me back, I remember he went, and it went through my ears and my eyes just opened.
Wow.
And she was holding me because she said she was praying. She was like, God, please put her back.
Yeah.
Please, please. She said, the family's going to blame this on me. Please put her back. And she was crying and rocking me. And when I
Mm.
opened my eyes, I said, no, I don't want to come back. I was just crying and crying and crying. But from there to the hospital, God did some miraculous thing from a broken arm. He fixed the broken arm right there in the hospital for my brother praying. My brother Cornelius prayed. And my arm, I literally saw it. It was twisted and I literally saw it straightened up.
Wow.
My ribs were still bruised, and they made them take x-rays 6 or 7 times because the doctor said, I've been doing this over 30 some years. I know a broken arm when I see one.
Mm.
That's a broken arm.
Yeah.
But it straightened up, but it still was swollen. My
Mhm.
lip was swollen like a ball.
Mhm.
The left side of my brain was swollen. And the doctor said, don't let her go to sleep. But what he didn't know is when I went back and I was at my cousin's house, I slept. I went to sleep. And I didn't realize because I didn't want to go to the hospital. I still was fussing and cussing and everything. And looked in the mirror, this was so huge, and then it really hit me and I could barely walk, and so I had to call on the phone and tell my brother. I said, I tried to kill myself. Can you come get me? Where are you? I'm at I'm at my cousin's house. And they came and took me to the hospital. So all of that God did super, naturally. And so they had to, tend to my wounds for a whole month even before I was able to go back to my place of stay.
So God miraculously brought you back to life, and then He healed you. So, in the
Right.
interest of time, because we're coming in kind of close on the hour, I just want to talk about the restorative process for you, because you
Hmm.
did that. Now, that ironically, you were working for the Department of Mental Health, which is very interesting to me as well.
Right.
But also, what now? You have all this background work. You could see now in hindsight how God was with you the entire time through all, and
Hmm.
you in your talking, you were even demonstrating it in your conversation, and how God had never left you even through the thread of whatever it is that you were doing. So what I want to do is encourage people that
Right.
no matter what you or your friends or family may be doing, or what they say they want or they don't want, God is big enough where he we don't, because I know even I've been guilty of this, of saying, somebody has to want deliverance, somebody has to want to be free, and the truth of the matter is they don't have to want it. They don't have to want it. God is big enough that He is able to make the difference in someone's life, to show him that they need Him. And
Right.
so He did this with you in this circumstance. So fast forward, how do we get to a point where you're past you're
Yeah.
past it? When did you surrender your call? When this happened, and what was
Yeah.
the path to
So
healing like for you?
right. So really quick. So after that, when I went back home, I still was depressed. I was going to work every day and still not eating, just going to work, crying myself to sleep. God eventually came. He came, filled my room, was filled, and it was the present. I was like, I've never felt such at peace. It was a peace that surpasses all understanding. He said, um, I came to get you. He said, your tears said that you're ready to go. And I was like, he said, oh, I knew you wasn't ready to go. But I came to check up on you. And for me, that shifted my whole relationship with God because I said, if he could come and see about little old me,
Yeah.
that was powerful. And then something happened to where somebody reminded me of something about speaking in tongues. And I said, God, do I speak in? And my tongues went and stopped. And I got
Yeah.
scared. I laid in the bed. And then the interpretation was if I can speak in tongues, then I can speak at will. And I spoke in tongues and spoke myself to sleep. And I start healing from
Yeah.
that point. Went back to
From
church,
the
start
inside.
serving. Yeah, start serving, got into the church, and then God moved me to a bigger church. I wasn't used to big churches, but he used me there, and I was excited about what I was doing, and I found my passion. It was like, when you call Debbie, where's she? At church. Because at first the family, someone was like, oh, she going to church, because when something dramatic like that happened in somebody's life, they're going to do that, but then I'll go back to their lifestyle, you know. And I didn't want to go back
And you never
at
went
that
back.
point. I just was like so excited. I was like, oh, and I was learning. Then I started to get my relationship with God, not because of what everybody else believed,
Yeah.
but
And that's key.
establishing that relationship with Him. And I was so happy that He came to see about me. And one of the things He said before He left that room was, if you ever feel like you don't want to be here anymore, He said, just tell me to come and get you. And I was like, wow. Those are things that we don't think about. Just asking
Yeah.
the creator, look, I'm tired, God. I'm tired. I
Yeah.
don't want to be here anymore. Can you come and get me? And when he said that, that revelation was like, oh wow, that's all I had to do. You know what I'm saying? Because he probably would have came and talked, and what would have happened? No, right?
Mhm.
And then he still would have made sure I was pushed further into, my will and purpose in life. And so after that, I went to ministry school, but he still didn't want me to be ordained in. He said, I just need you to get the knowledge. The knowledge. So I got the knowledge, and then years later, I got ordained, and and met my husband and went to church, and start preaching and never looked back.
So let me ask this.
Mhm.
It take a minute. So to just if to talk to people, if they even if they're believers, if they're, whoever might be listening to this, because sometimes
Mhm.
people who don't believe, listen to our program.
Right.
So what would you say to someone who is battling these feelings and these emotions, and what could you say to help them in these
I
circumstances?
I would say this, and I've actually written this in a book. I'm working for the mental health. I should have got the help that I needed. But in our community, if you go, you're crazy. You're not crazy.
Yeah,
You need to reach out for the help that you need. Get
yeah,
a psychiatrist. Sometimes your depression level may not be as high. I said, go get a life coach. Go get a mentor, because they can probably guide you in those areas that you feel empty in concerning will and purpose.
yeah.
I needed God in my life. That filled the void. But also he starts saying, remember, you're a writer, you're a singer, you have this going on, you have
Mhm.
this gift, you love to pray. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? And so
Mhm.
all of that. So you need a life coach, a mentor, a teacher. Go and get counseling. Let me call it counseling. Go and
Yes.
get the counseling. It might be for 1 month, 2 months, but it makes a difference. It makes a difference. So I would say go and get that help. Reach out. They have a hotline number. Call the hotline number. They don't know who you are.
Yeah.
There's no embarrassment there. You
Mhm.
know, call that hotline number, but reach out to someone that you can trust. If that first person don't get it, go to the second person, the third person. Keep going until somebody get it, right?
Yeah. And
What?
also, it makes a difference too, with um, because you can go to your church and there's a certain kind of pastoral counseling you can get
Right.
that's useful. But it's important for pastoral counselors also to understand, especially if they are not professionally trained or licensed. I would
Right.
even say licensed, to know when what they can do to help an individual stops and when they
Right.
need someone that has a different level of specific mental health training to start. and encourage people to use their mental health benefits, find out what their health benefits are on their job. And
Right.
and I'll just say, as ministers, pastoral counselors, build your network of individuals, of Christian therapists that are licensed, that
Yes.
and trust what they are imparting into the people that you send to them, so that
Right.
you can make quality referrals as
And
well.
that's true because remember I told you I have a listing now because I do marriage counseling. I do
Hmm.
counseling, and like you said, when I consider myself level one, but if I'm counseling to you and I know that you're also going on that level two, I would immediately give them the number, call them, and I make the connection and send them there. I'm
Yes,
not too prideful to say no. I'm going to give you the word of God. Sometimes we need more than that. So I
yes,
have a listing of, I have a girlfriend, her name is Dr. Amber. Wonderful. She gave me the listing. I connect with her. Any other ministers need that or pastors. I have that listing. I can get that listing to you because we need that. Now, they do have training that they give to pastors to be on that level. That's another thing that we can do as ministers of, reconciliation. We can do
yeah,
that as well, because we're sometimes we do it on the level of the word of God, but God is like, sometimes we need more,
yes.
people need more than that. So we have to keep, kind of really use wisdom in what we're doing because I've had a client that I was counseling, and then they went into a suicide mode, and then I counseled them up to that point, and then made the connection in the phone calls.
Yeah, because you have so that you can engage someone that has a different type of skill set.
Right.
So with that, what I'd like to do, how if people want to get in contact with you, how can they contact you, and how can they get your children's book, the
Okay.
Rocky the Clown book?
Right. So you can contact me by email with testament, like the Bible Testament, testament of love at yahoo.com. Rocket and Clown, I have a page on Facebook for Rocket and Clown, but you can go to Amazon.com. You can go to Barnes and Nobles. You will see Rocket and Clown. I actually had the book sitting here because I had did a, this is Rocky. So this is what you should be looking for.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
also, I did a marriage book, and this is so you want to get married, huh? And it says marriage ain't for punks.
It
And
sure
this
is.
is, yeah. And so if
Mhm.
you go and look at She Is You on Facebook, you can find us there. On Instagram, it is at official She Is You. Also Praise House Ministries, my husband will get me. Praise House
You got to get
Ministries
Pastor Billy some.
is
Uh-huh.
on Facebook as well. If you want to email us, it's Praise House Ministries 18 at gmail.com. So
Hey,
that's what you can reach me. Feel free to call, call us because they have the number up there and you can call and everything, and reach out. You might want me
yes.
to come and speak, at a seminar concerning suicide. And I actually team up with one of my niece in love. Her name is Brittany. And Brittany Reeves, and she actually have workshops as well for depression and suicide. And sometimes we team up. So, I have something, there for different ministries and organizations as
Mhm.
well. So I'm very open to that and to continue to. And I love, thank you so much, Chaplain, for allowing me to share my testimony.
And that's a perfect place to end our show. And thank you so much for joining us. Thank you all, our viewing audience. Thank you for viewing with us Beyond the Shackles, where we believe, remember, by the blood of Jesus, all is set free. We love you and God bless you.